I'm so tired. Tell me when you push the button.
I already did.
Will you push the button already? It's filming right now? Yeah. First grade! How are you guys doing today? Welcome to the Dojiro home. This is it. This is all we have in our house. We have a couch and a box. No, I'm just kidding, but welcome to our home. We're gonna keep going today with Ruth from the Bible. We've been talking about Ruth last time. We're gonna keep going today, but I'm gonna do a little bit differently. I'm gonna have a friend helping. And I'm gonna call that friend over here. Actually, he's not a friend. Go ahead. Shout out, give a shout out.
Hi, first graders. Say hi to my buddy Lila.
Hey Lila, how you doing? Okay, so what we're doing today, Rumi's gonna be helping me, and we're gonna go through Ruth, but we're gonna do it a little bit differently. Which side of the camera are you gonna be on? You gonna be over there or over here?
I don't really care.
She's my helper, she's my assistant. We got this thing going, so go ahead and head back over there. But what we're gonna do a little bit differently today, and I'm pretty excited about this, is that we're gonna tell the story with the help of some little plastic friends of ours. So they're over here. So let's start from the beginning, just a quick recap. This is what we already covered last time. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And remember, a famine is when nothing is growing and there's not enough food. So a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn. That means he went to live in the country of Moab. He and his wife and his 2 sons.
Wait, yes, okay.
It's okay, just hold on. So you've got, the name of the man was Elimelech. So say that with me. Oh, your hair is like right in the video.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Would you like some help?
Yes, please.
There we go. The name of the man was Elimelech. Elimelech. The name of his wife was Naomi. And the name of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. Very manly names. They were from Benjamin in Judah, and they went to the country of Moab and remained there. So they leave Bethlehem, and they go all the way to the country of Moab. Now, here's what and they fell down and took a nap. No. So they went to the country of Moab, and here's what you need to know. Moab is not in Israel. It's not, oops, this guy needs to go up there. It's not part of God's people. It's not part of God's land. God made a promise to Abraham that he would give him the land of Israel. And because of this famine in the land, our friend Elimelech decides, I think I'm better leaving my own land. And I think I can take care of my family maybe better than God can take care of my family, which is a very sad choice. But he leaves, and he brings his wife with him and his 2 sons with him. And then you get to verse 3. So they're in a land, get this, friends, they're in a land that's not their own. They don't speak the same language. They don't have the same customs and the same traditions. They don't do things the same way. And it's only the 4 of them. It's not like they're with their grandmas and grandpas and their uncles and cousins and friends. It's just the 4 of them. Verse 3, but Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died. Wah, wah, wah. Sad day. He dies. And she was left with her 2 sons. Now, I do think that was an extremely sad day. She's in a land that's not her own, and her husband had decided to take her there. But she still has her 2 sons. And these 2 sons took wives, Moabite wives, so wives from that land. And there's 2 wives. One of them is Orpah, and the other is Ruth. They lived there for about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died. Wah, wah, wah. So they died. So imagine being Naomi, right, friends? Imagine you're in a land that's not yours. You no longer have your own family. You no longer have uncles or cousins or brothers or aunts or anyone. Now, yeah, they've been there for 10 years, but there's no one else there. There's nothing else there. And while she's in Moab, which is a land which is away from Israel, she finds out that the famine is gone in the land. So she decides to return. So they start heading back, all 3 of them, to go back to Bethlehem. And when they're about halfway, she stops and says to her girls, she says, "Girls, why don't you just go home? Because, listen, we're going to..." Get up while I'm talking to you, please. Thank you. "Listen, we're going to go to Israel, to Bethlehem, and that's not your land. They don't speak your language. It's not your people. So why don't you just go home?" And the conversation was a little bit longer than that. But in the end, Orpah, the one in the middle, she goes, "Oh, it's going to be so sad, but okay, bye-bye." So she goes back to her own family's house. Whoa! And Ruth fell off. She goes back to her own family's house, but Ruth says something that's really loyal, right? She says this. Here's Ruth talking. "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge," which means like where you stay, "I will stay. And your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." Listen to what she's saying. Like she's saying to Naomi, "I am so loyal to you out of just my love for you being my mother-in-law that I'm going to be with you all the time. I will go where you go. I will stay where you stay. Your people are going to become my people, and your God will be my God." In fact, she goes on and even says this, "Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me and more, if anything but death parts me from you." She says, "I will be with you through thick and thin. I will be with you through good times and bad times." So they go together all the way back to Bethlehem. And Ruth fell over. They go all the way back to Bethlehem. And remember, I told you at the end of last week's story that what we're really going to see is that God is in control, but God's like behind the scenes, right? There's no prophet talking to them. There's no priest. But God is working through every difficulty and every hardship. And even though some things seem to be lucky or happen by chance, they're really not, because God's in control of all of these things. For example, they go back to Israel at the time of the barley harvest. Barley is a grain that was grown in Israel. It's grown all over the place, but they go back at just the right time. And you could say, "Oh, how lucky they got back at just the right time." But really, it's not that they were lucky. It's that God's in control, right? Because there's also a man in chapter 2, which we didn't read about last week. Now, Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. I just like that name, Boaz. Now, she hasn't met Boaz yet, but the author of Ruth is introducing him to us. So there's Boaz. Here's this man who, he's wealthy. He has fields. He's been growing barley, and he's in Bethlehem. He's also single. He's not married. I'm just giving you a little bit of a warning. They may or may not fall in love. We'll see. We shall see. Here's how it starts. Now, Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth, the Moabite, I'm going to move him away for a second. Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, "Let me go into the field and glean." That means let me go work and gather some of the grain from whoever's field I find favor in. So if I'm just going to go, and here's what they would do. As the grain was grown, as it had grown at harvest time, the workers would cut the grain down and bundle it up into these piles and stack them all up. And sometimes they would miss some grain here and a little bit of grain there. And so what God's law allowed, it's actually in part of God's law, that they wouldn't clean up everything, but they would leave little bits here and there so that the poor people could go and find food. So she's basically going to do what the poor people are going to do, and that's she's going to go find the food. So she just so happens, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. There's nothing that just so happens. There's no luck, but she goes to one of Boaz's fields. So while she's working, she's been working there all day. The workers are there. There's other people who are gleaning like her, and they're getting little bits of grain here and there. We're talking like a little bit here, a little bit there, and it takes a lot of grain to actually make bread and stuff. She's been working all day long. Well, Boaz returns from the city, and he sees her, and he sees some of his other workers. So I'm just going to use some of these guys. We've already seen them, but let's pretend this is one of the workers in his field. And Boaz goes up to him and says, "Hey, who's that lady over there?" And the worker says, "Well, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And she said, 'Please let me work and glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers.' So she came, and she's continued since early morning and all the way until now. She's only had a short break." So Boaz goes up to her, and he says, "Now listen, my daughter. Do not go and work or glean in another field, and don't leave my field. But keep a close eye to the young women who are here, and let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them." And he says, "I've told my men not to kick you out, but to let you be here." And he says, "You could stay working in my field." He's being kind to her. Do you know why he's being kind to her? What did he say? She actually says, "How have I found favor in your eyes? Why should you even be kind to me? Why should you take notice of me?" She says, "I am a foreigner." And Boaz answered her, and he says this, listen carefully. Basically what he's saying is, listen, people talk about you, but what they've said is good things. Listen, Boaz said, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law, Naomi, since the death of her husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother in your native land, and you came to a people that you did not know before." And then he goes on saying, basically, "May the Lord bless you and repay you for your kindness." Remember, she was kind. Where's Naomi? Oh, there's Naomi. She was kind to Naomi. She didn't leave Naomi. She didn't do it so that other people would like her. She didn't do it because she wanted people to talk good about her. She did it because she loved Naomi and she wanted to be loyal to her. But now people have said things. And you know what? Here's the truth. People always talk about us, right? People will say things about you. People will say things about me. The question is, what are they going to say? Are they going to say good things because you do good things? Or are they going to say bad things because you do bad things, right? Here, all she had done was good things. And because of that, people told Boaz, and now Boaz is being kind. Actually, Boaz is going to be really kind to her. Boaz is actually going to give her extra food to take home to Naomi, and he's going to tell his workers to leave extra bits for her to find. He doesn't just give everything to her, but he tells them, take care of her, make sure she finds enough food for her family. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit because our time is short and I'm going to try to finish this up. But what basically happens, the story goes on and we don't have time to go into it, but they get to know each other better. And at a certain point, basically, here's what Ruth says to him. She makes it known to him that she's willing actually to get married to him. And he's like mind blown because apparently he was a little bit older than her. So he was surprised that she would fall in love with him because he was older. But there was a problem. And the problem was this. The way things worked back then is you remember Elimelech? Elimelech was the dad who originally left for the country of Moab. Elimelech had fields and he had property. And since he was dead, she basically, because she's the daughter-in-law of Ruth, of Naomi, whoever marries her is going to get all of his property. And so the way that the laws worked back then was that whoever was the closest relative got the opportunity to buy the fields. So this is kind of, it's kind of weird the way this works. So what happens is Boaz, he goes to where all the men are and he tells all the men to come because apparently there's one relative that's even closer who has the right to buy the fields. And so he tells the man in front of everyone, there's like all these people standing by. He's like, hey, come over here. Listen to this. Listen to what I'm about to say. So Boaz tells the man who is the closer relative, who should be able to buy the fields. He says, listen, Elimelech died, as you know, and he has these fields. And Boaz says, I want to buy them, but you actually are the one who should be able to buy them. And the guy says, cool, I'll totally buy the fields, man. And Boaz says, awesome. When you do, just know you have to marry the Moabite. And the man goes, well, actually, you can buy them. Because he didn't want to marry the Moabite. Her name is Ruth, but they always call her the Moabite. So because she's from Moab. So they make a deal, and everyone, there's like tons of other people standing around watching. This is how they made deals back then. It's really funny. We don't make deals like this now. Now, when we want to make a deal, we like write down on a piece of paper and it says, I'm going to do this. And then everyone else signs it and they see it, right? So that's how deals are made now. Back then, they would gather people around. All these people could hear the deal, right? And then the person making the deal, in this case, it was Boaz, he took his shoe off. Are you ready for this? This is what they did. He took his shoe off and he holds it up and he says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy the field. Let me see. And I'm going to marry Ruth. And he holds his shoe out and he hands the shoe to the other guy. His stinky, smelly, sweaty, grimy shoe. That's how they made deals. Let me just read it for you. Now, this is the custom in the former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm the transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. So he took his shoe off and he's like, I'm going to buy the field. Can you imagine if we did that even now today? Like your stinky, smelly shoe. I'm going to buy this field and I'm going to marry the Moabite. And he hands it to the other guy and everyone's watching and everyone has heard the deal. So if the other guy takes the shoe, everyone goes, we heard it, we saw it, and we know that it's going to happen. So it happens. So, yay! They have a wedding. They get married, and they live happily ever after. Actually, it's even better than that. Remember how I told you that God's in charge of all things? He's controlling all things from behind the scenes. See, it wasn't an accident that they came back from Moab during the time of barley. And it wasn't an accident. It's like the author of Ruth wants you to, he's winking, and they just so happened to come back at the time of the barley harvest. And just so happens that Ruth went to Boaz's field, because she could have gone to anyone's field. But she just so happened to go to Boaz's field. Well, Boaz just so happens to be the guy that God wants her to get married to. And it just so happens that they fall in love and he's able to marry her. Not only that, the end of the book is probably the absolute best. I'm going to read it and then explain it. After they got married, so Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. And she bore a son. And the women said to Naomi, remember how when I mentioned this last week, when they first came back from Jerusalem, or to Bethlehem, she said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mata, which means bitter. Because remember, she said, I left Israel when I went to Moab and I had sons and I had a husband and now I've come back with nothing. And she said, I'm bitter. Well, now all the women are saying to her, blessed be the Lord. Who took care of your life. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher in your old age. And so they're all excited now about Naomi. But here's what happens. The women of the neighborhood, they gave him a name and they said, a son has been born to Naomi, even though it was technically Ruth. And they named him Obed, which is an interesting name. Obed. It's like, oh, where's my bed? Obed. They named him Obed. Now listen, he was the father of Jesse. Do you know who Jesse was the father of? He was the father of a boy who was a little shepherd who one day fought a giant. Do you know the name of that boy? Who's the boy, Rumi?
David.
David! Do you know David is going to become, here's a multiple choice question. The servant of Israel? Will he become a shepherd of Israel? Or will he become the king of Israel? What do you think, Rumi?
King of Israel.
The king of Israel. So here, this girl who's from another land, far, far away, God brings her back and has her marry. She just totally fell off the cliff. Whoa. God has her marry Boaz because God has a plan. And God's plan is that their child will become the grandpa of the greatest king of Israel. And do you know who else came from the line of David, from that king's family? Jesus is born. So this is just amazing. Here's the point of the story, friends. Even though sometimes we don't understand what's going on, sometimes life is tough. Sometimes life is sad, right? For Naomi, life was very sad. She left with a husband and sons, but she doesn't know what God's plans are. She doesn't know why God's doing what God's doing. She doesn't know that she's going to become the great grandma of the greatest king of Israel, right? She doesn't know that. She just hurts. And sometimes life is tough and sometimes we hurt. But really, God's got a plan and we can trust God's plan. And Ruth teaches us that God is working his plan. And even if we don't know it, even if we don't see it, even if we don't understand it, God's got it taken care of. And in the end, God's plans are always better than our plans. Is that a good story? I think so. So this is Mr. Dojro and my assistant for the day, Rumi, signing off. Push the button.